I saw Gideon's presentation, and I was just blown away. As an artist, he was really reaching for something, and I really just really admired what he was doing. And I just went up to him and introduced myself and asked if he wanted to do a collaboration.
I immediately knew that something was going on with Reuben's work that could translate to working with bodies.
I sort of was into making sculptures that moved, that had motors, and he was into dance, and it just seemed like some way to have the dancer be the movement.
I said, well, what about if we animate that whole sculpture through the information of a moving body?
And, to be honest, I was sort of thinking like a weekend, sort of excursion involving some sticks and strings, and, Gideon being Gideon turned it into this worldwide tour and, a whole production. So that's the fun of collaboration. I kind of feel like my job right now is to make a sculpture that gives him the most expressive potential. It's a bit like making an instrument, and then I'm giving the instrument to Gideon. It's tricky. We don't know how Gideon's going to relate to it, or the dancers are going to work with it, so there's a huge amount of unknown. It's possible to be just absolutely wonderful, and it's possible to be really challenging. So this is an elevation view of the connected sculpture, and basically it has a frame here that will be rigged, and so it will be lifted up to the ceiling of a theater. So as the dancer moves forward and backwards, the whole sculpture will raise and fall. It's cool. Meanwhile, we had been sort of emailing and Skyping and...
Hey, Reuben.
Hey, Gideon, you're there.
Yes. Oh, wow. I can see you, and I can see the frame up the top. That looks fantastic.
Can you see any strings?
Yeah, I can see the strings.
That's where we are. A big old, lots of strings, and getting ready to untangle it and see what happens.
Partly excited, partly terrified.
I know.
For 5.5 weeks, I just worked with 5 dancers in a studio, almost with no music, with no set, and so really building these phrases and these ideas of symmetry through different scales. It's only possible to imagine so much without the elements being together. When I first saw the sculpture in Melbourne, it was a bit of a mess because the magnets were just all attracting each other and we're getting these clumps, and there's twists in the string, and I was a bit devastated actually.
Oh my God.
Kind of nasty, huh?
Pretty tangly.
Pretty nasty, yeah.
After it came out of the box and we put it all together, I have to confess that it wasn't quite the size that I imagined. I was expecting the diamond with the paper pieces to be a little bit bigger, even though actually it is the exact dimensions that we measured in California. I was scared. But as I began working with it, it became larger and larger and larger. The sculpture itself was not just the diamond plane, it was all the strings going to the loom, and the loom itself was part of the sculpture. And so if you look at that whole relationship, it was this vast, intricate world. It just began to get just bigger and bigger, and I don't think it was really planned, and now it's become this quite large work.
It's like alive, and it's alive.
I'm not actually nervous about the relationship between the sculpture and the dance and the movement. I think that works really well. It's more about how do I piece it all together into something that's an event over time that actually makes some kind of greater sense. Okay, it's fascinating. You have this beautiful sculpture, it's connected to a person, it's fascinating for about 5 minutes. Then what?
I think when it should come together.
It came to me and I suggested to Reuben that how about the sculpture, or at least a large part of it, is built on stage. And so I think for me, it's partly the life of the sculpture. It's like it comes into being over time. I think what's very important for us is finding out what are the potentials of that sculpture. What are all the things that this sculpture can do? What are the things that it can't do? We're kind of really playing with this new instrument. And we're becoming instrumentalists.
I think that collaborations have an inherent risk of not working because there's a lot of luck involved.
Yeah, I would say that collaboration is partly luck, that this is a lucky one, and that it just involves an incredible amount of trust.
You never really are going to know what's going to happen when you start to work together. Some things come together as you imagine, but mostly the interesting things are the things that you don't imagine.